Welcome to The Fighter with Chris Sims here on Juno News. My name is Chris Sims. I'm the Alberta Director for the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, and this show is all about fighting for you, for the taxpayer, for the everyday working man and woman in Canada, and that is why we have got a hot show for you today. Something kind of happened at the end of last week and over the weekend. Basically, trade negotiations between Canada and the United States, two huge trading partners, have ground to a halt. We've got Prime Minister Mark Carney saying, hey, we were making some progress and then something happened. And we have President of the United States, Donald Trump. He is hopping mad about an ad that included the voice of US President Ronald Reagan. We showed it to you here on this show a couple of weeks ago. So this all blew up. So for folks who are trying to follow along at home, basically, we were in current negotiations. Ottawa and Washington, D.C. We're in current negotiations to hammer out things, trade deals on things like energy, aluminum, auto manufacturing, all that jazz. Sounded like there was some progress being made. Sounded like there was some relationship warming. The reason why this is super important to you as the everyday working person is because tariffs are always hanging over our heads, okay? As punishment. Tariffs are just trade taxes. They cost you more to buy stuff here in Canada when we have tariffs. It also costs our businesses more to ship their stuff to the United States and try to sell it there because they have tariffs. So tariffs are just trade taxes, and it's super important we keep them low or non-existent. And the trade relationship that we have with Canada and the United States is not about personalities, it's about money. We actually have some numbers here that show you the daily two-way trade between Canada and the United States is about $3 billion. Okay, take a look at that. $3.6 billion a day. You know how much money we waste on the CBC every year? Imagine 2 of those a day, but it's valuable. This is trade. This is back and forth. Yearly, more than 1.3 trillion. Okay, this is the kind of money we're talking about here. This is what's on the line. Not necessarily personality conflicts, but here's the problem. Personality conflicts matter because we're not dealing with data spreadsheets here talking to each other like robots. We're dealing with human beings, okay? Who have emotions, feelings, opinions, hang-ups, and they can react to each other. So what happened is US President Donald Trump decided he did not like the ad that was running, that was produced by the Ford government leading Ontario, that included comments from the late US President Ronald Reagan talking about tariffs. This all blew up, okay? Trump got angry and said, this is totally offside. I didn't accept this. The Reagan Foundation also said, you folks didn't consult us, et cetera, and personalities got in the way. And now, unfortunately, normal people, everybody watching this show, everybody who's an American, whose livelihood depends on Canadian two-way trade and good business practices, they're all going to be hurting because of this kind of stuff, which is why we need to put an end to it, and we need a new trade deal, which leads us to what's happening right now with our national leaders. Okay, so this is what's going on. We've got both Prime Minister Mark Carney and US President Donald Trump. They're both over in Asia right now. Listen to what Prime Minister Mark Carney said about the current trade relationship before all of this hit the fan. Listen to this.
We stand ready to sit down with the United States, myself with the President, my colleagues with their colleagues, when the U.S. is ready to sit down. We had made considerable progress on a supplement to the trading relationship that we had, considerable progress in the areas of steel, aluminum, and energy, associated areas as well. And as I just said, we're ready to sit down when they are ready to do that.
Okay, so that was Carney. So I would say good tone, fatherly, the adult in the room. We were making progress. We're ready to sit back down. I would say that's a pretty good tone when you're trying to deal with somebody with whom you have a difficult relationship. But here's what US President Donald Trump said. Now, we don't have video, it's just audio, and it sounds noisy. That's because he's literally on Air Force One, and he's kind of like leaning over and he's talking to the reporters, and they ask him about what's going on with Canada. Listen to this.
As much as I love Canada itself and the people of Canada, they've just had a lot of bad representatives. They did a fake ad yesterday. They were caught. The Ronald Reagan Foundation was the one that caught them. And they've apologized, and they said, we're going to take the ad down. Well, they did it, but they did it very late. They let it play for another 2 nights, and now they took that ad down. Prime Minister knew what the ad was before it went.
Will you see him at APEC? Do you want to meet with him?
I don't want to meet with him. No, I'm not going to be meeting with him for a while. No, I'm very happy with the deal we have right now with Canada.
So that is what Mark Carney is walking into. Where do we go from here? We're going to find out in a moment. But first, let's listen to our sponsor.
This is a campaign called Unsmoke. Look, folks, it's time to modernize Canada's rules on nicotine. Alternatives to cigarettes like heated tobacco, vaping products, and oral smokeless products don't burn tobacco or produce smoke. They aren't risk-free, but the growing body of scientific evidence shows that they have the potential to be substantially less harmful than smoking. Despite this, Canadians are banned access to critical information and even some products. Nicotine pouches remain banned in convenience stores, and current laws ban communication about the risks of these products compared to cigarettes. It's unbelievable. The evidence is here. The tools exist. Canadians should have the freedom to know. You can learn more by visiting unsmoke.ca.
Okay, so this is the situation we're in right now. Prime Minister Mark Carney and US President Donald Trump, they're both going to be in the same room. We know that for a fact because at least they all need to stand together for that awkward group photo at APEC. So how is Carney going to get in front of Trump? How is he going to try to say, listen, we've apologized, we've taken the ad down, we both want a deal, let's make a deal? Well, do we need somebody who can talk to US President Donald Trump the way that he talks to other people? Do we need somebody who's bilingual in MAGA? Let's find out. Let's find out from a guy who actually talks to people in the United States about serious issues like taxes, jobs, and trade, and politics and media all the time. Let's hear from Brian Lilley. Joining me now is Brian Lilley. He is the senior columnist with the Toronto Sun, and he is also the host of the Full Comment podcast. I strongly recommend that you listen to Brian's podcast. If you're scrolling through your iTunes or however you listen to it, look for kind of the orange icon. I often refer to Brian as my conduit between what is the independent media that we're doing here at Juno News and the mainstream media. Brian and I have worked together for a long time, decades, in fact, off and on. So Brian, I know,
People
right?
will think we're old.
Ixnay on the knowing who Reagan was, eh? Okay, so we got a lot to talk about. Number one, what's the latest you're hearing? Like, I know that we see mainstream media headlines like, are you in secret negotiations to fix this with Ben Shapiro or Steve Bannon? Like, please tell me.
I wish there was a way to fix it. The Americans have had a meltdown, and even people that I thought were reasonable are having a meltdown over this ad. And look, you can have a debate on, was it a good use of money? Was it a good strategy? But people that should know better are still freaking out. They lied to us. They made Reagan say bad things about tariffs. I think there's whole books on that. So I don't know who you reach out to, but the main thing coming out of this is something that Kevin Hassett said, Trump's National Economic Council director. And he was speaking with reporters the other day, and he contradicted what Mark Carney, our prime minister, said in Malaysia. Carney says they're getting close to a deal. Hassett said, it's not really about the ad. Not one ad wouldn't set everything off. This is part of growing frustration over months with the Canadians. And so, are we again getting in our own way? And I think we are. It's tough to tell. PMO was leaking to the Globe and Mail last week that a deal was imminent. I was hearing the opposite. Carney says that we're very close. Hassett, who's in the negotiations, and some of them, says we're not. But we do know that Donald Trump decided to end all talks over this ad. Now, I think the ad is an excuse, whether it's an excuse because, well, the trade talks just weren't going well, or as Ben Mulrooney has put forward, that perhaps this is Trump laying the groundwork to be able to blame Canada if he loses the Supreme Court case. Those are both possibilities. I don't think they will lose the Supreme Court case, by the way. One, it's Supreme Court stacked with Republicans. Two, I've read the pertinent sections of the 1962 Expanding Trade Act, which
Of
is what
course
this
you
is
have.
from.
That's great.
And the act gives the president broad powers, but maybe he is concerned about losing. They lost in a lower court. Maybe, John Roberts flips and sides with the Democrats once again. You never know. And so we are just in the middle of a great amount of pain over the whims of Donald Trump and the actions of Doug Ford. Kind of feeling sorry for Mark Carney because he's stuck between them, having to clean up on aisle 7. And no, I don't think there is a big coordination between Ford and Carney to be good cop, bad cop on this. Do I think that Ford and his team alerted Carney? Yeah, they knew about the ad ahead of time. But this isn't some kind of strategy. And Mark Carney is seriously sitting there going, oh, crap, what do I do now?
Yeah, I think he's at the oh crap stage. From what we could tell from headlines, it sounded like there was some progress being made. But then to your point, I watched that same clip where that American trade negotiator was saying, yeah, well, the wheels were all kind of falling off anyway, because I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Brian. I'm paraphrasing him, but he said some of the antics of the Trudeau administration are carrying over till now. What do you think he means by that? My take on that tone was that the Canadians were being too rigid, maybe not offering up things like supply managed areas of trade, or were they actually just showing up late to meetings and being disrespectful? Like, what was your take
But
on that?
that would be the Trudeau way, showing up late to meetings
Yeah,
and being
that's what I mean. Yeah.
disrespectful. So I don't think it's that. Look, in the last round of trade talks, the Americans negotiated greater access to our dairy market,
Mhm.
particularly, supply managed cheese and milk. And no, we're not going to be drinking bovine growth hormone milk. You can barely find that in the States. You'd have to go looking for it.
I don't know why you'd bring that up talking to me, Brian. Really.
I have no idea. But I always get that in emails. Well, we don't want bovine
No,
growth
no,
hormone milk
you
anyway.
will. Yep, yep.
It's hard to find in the States. The public doesn't want it there either, so it's gone away. But they negotiated a certain amount of access. And then what we did was we said, yes, but we'll allot that quota to Agropur and Saputo and Armstrong cheese. And guess what? They were not importing it. And the Americans said, well, wait a minute, you're playing foul here. And we've been fighting over it ever since. Well, since then, we're not even willing to give an inch. So the Americans don't want rid of supply management, but they do want some access. And we've just passed a law saying you can't ever negotiate on this. So that's a real problem. And the way it's been described to me, and this was from a Canadian, is that Canadian who's been part of this process over the years said, we always take the same approach. We go into the room and we demand everything and offer nothing. And we think that's a good negotiating tactic. And the Americans are apparently fed up with us. You look at things like the de minimis. Going to get nerdy here,
Yep.
but there have been a bunch of stories recently about how the Americans got rid of their de minimis, which is how much you can ship into the U.S. before you pay duties or taxes. And they would allow us to ship in $800. And we start charging taxes at $40. We start charging duty or tariffs at $150. And they would just say, why don't you match us? Match us so that our businesses are treated equally. And we just said no. We said absolutely not. Look at how we handled the digital services tax. We were apparently close to a deal in June. The Americans said, will you please just pause the implementation of your digital services tax on July 1st while these negotiations are going on? And we said, absolutely not. And then what happened? We got rid of the whole tax 2 hours before it was supposed to come into effect because Trump called off all trade talks back then. We are often our own worst enemies. That might be the case with the ad, but there might be something else going on in the background that we don't know.
This is striking me as Bush League, frankly, from our side of things, unfortunately. And it's going to hurt. My point here is that it hurts all of us. It hurts normal working people. It isn't about the personalities involved. Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
Well, we've got some smart people in there who are supposed to be handling this, but obviously things aren't going well. And on the American side, by the way, it's not like everything's with Trump and he's irrational and so you can't ever deal with him. No, you got guys like Jameson Greer and Kevin Hassett, and these are smart folks that have these conversations with every other country in the world, and they're about to have a deal with China, and still not us. They've got to deal with every G7 country in the world except us. It's at a certain point we become the problem. And as I said, whether it's the ad or something else, I don't know. But let me say this about the ad. A lot of people complaining about the $75 million. If the ad had worked and helped get the tariffs lifted, that would have been a bargain considering how much this is hurting our economy. The amount of trade, 75 million, is a pittance compared to how this is hitting industries straight across the country.
So just quickly on the ad, I know that some folks disagree with me here. A few weeks ago, that's what I said as well. That 75 million, that sounds like a lot of money, but if this actually lands us an actual trade deal with our biggest trading partner, that's worth it. What I didn't know, and I know some folks consider this a red herring, but I don't, because I think that there's some emotional chess going on here between Trump, the American people, the Reagan Foundation, etc. I was born in the 70s, raised in the 80s, loved Ronald Reagan. I know for a fact that the Reagan Foundation is very protective of the voice, the image, all of their stuff that involves U.S. President Ronald Reagan. Now, I thought 2 weeks ago when I heard the ad that the Ford team had gotten permission from the Reagan Foundation. If they'd had their blessing in writing, I would argue Trump wouldn't be able to use this as defending Reagan's legacy. Look, they've wronged him. Look, there's maybe a legal reason. There isn't. It's public domain. But it was the perception that he had been wronged and that the language had been changed or cut. And that gave Trump the excuse. We don't need to accept the excuse. He still used it, though, to great effect.
The only class that I paid attention to in journalism school was media law because I didn't want to get sued. And so far, touch wood, I've been successful.
Not quite.
American copyright law is clear. Any creative work produced by a federal public servant in the context of their work duties is public domain.
Sure.
And so this is public domain. There's no need to ask for permission. This clip has been, I knew of this clip long before the ad came out because people have been posting it since Trump started talking about imposing tariffs again. So
but they get to be the wounded party here. They get to act as the wounded party. This is part of the thing.
I think Trump saw the ad. On Tuesday, he was fine with the ad, talked about it at the Rose Garden. By Thursday, it had annoyed him. Someone at the White House called the Reagan Foundation, leaned on it.
That's right.
They bent over backwards to distort reality, and that allowed Trump to go off.
And here we are.
It's how do we get out of this? I don't know. But in the meantime, you've got people losing their jobs or losing hours or this is important.
Very.
And every once in a while, I start hearing from folks that say, we don't need any deal with the Americans. The only way you can say that is if you're part of the laptop class or you're retired with a really comfy government pension.
Amen. Let's pull up the numbers here because this is not about some schoolyard. I don't like him anymore and he doesn't sit at my cafeteria table, which is nonsense. Let's point up the numbers here. We have a couple of graphic boards to show you, and it's showing the daily trade numbers. Okay. So daily, okay, between Canada and the United States, these are the latest figures for our two-way trade. $3.6 billion, okay, per day. That's 2 CBCs, Brian, every day. Yearly, this is mind-blowing. The two-way trade between Canada and the United States, $1.3 trillion. Folks, to understand how big a trillion is, if you started counting up loonies like Scrooge McDuck, it would take you 30,000 years to count to 1 trillion.
I'll tell you why this is more important for us to be concerned about this than the Americans, though, Chris, is that, and this will really speak to the folks that want to retaliate with moves to hurt the American economy by, putting tariffs on their goods or striking them back somehow. The impact of trade with the U.S. on our economy is just shy of 20%. It's like high 18, low 19% of our total GDP.
Correct.
It's less than 2% of theirs. It is 10 times more important to our economy than trade with us is to them. They could actually lose all trade with Canada, and the overall American economy would not take that big of a hit. So we need to keep that in perspective. Now, do we have what is needed to go down there and make a compelling case that they should strike a deal with us? Yes. Whether it is oil,
Yeah.
whether it is natural gas, critical minerals, manufacturing capacity, all this talk of moving the auto jobs. I've spoken to American senators who agree with Trump on a lot of things. They're in his party. And they'll just tell you, we don't have the labor force to fill all these jobs. You can move the car plant to Ohio or Michigan tomorrow. We're not going to be able to fill all those jobs. So we've got the manufacturing capacity. We've got the oil. We've got the LNG. We've got the critical minerals. We've got the agricultural goods. We've got the lumber. We need to package that together along with saying we'll give you special access to the critical minerals, whether it's in Nova Scotia, which has critical minerals that nobody else has, or the Ring of Fire in Ontario, or in Northern Alberta. These are sprinkled throughout the country. We will work with you on ensuring that you not only have access to them, but we will put in the processing capacity. We will increase our defense in the Arctic, in the North, where you're worried about it, make it a full package deal. The Americans wanted that at one point. Interesting thing that Prime Minister Carney said in Malaysia this morning was that the Americans walked away from that and went to focusing on sectoral tariffs back in July. We need to find a way to put it all back together. Trump's just signed deals for critical minerals with Australia, with Malaysia. We need to get in there and do a sales pitch.
Yes.
Not a protectionist pitch, but a sales pitch of here's why you need us. Here's why we're good friends. Here's how we can do better business together.
Let's make a deal. I hear he likes making deals, right? So why don't we talk his language? A couple more questions for you here, Brian. On your point there, I noticed that Trump's ears kind of perked up and he seemed more interested a little while ago when the issue of the Keystone pipeline came back up. Because last we heard, we've got it built right to the Canadian-US border. Biden killed it. Trudeau got knocked over with a feather and didn't put up any protest. But we know Trump is in favor of oil pipelines. So he seemed kind of perked up on that. So is the answer what Professor Ian Lee often points out, very smartly, is that, to your point, we got all these critical minerals and resources and stuff. Why don't we present a deal to him? The question I have for you is Carney the right guy to be presenting a deal to him? Or does he need a better tag team partner than Ford? Because Ford is just dumping gasoline on this dumpster fire. He should stop talking about this. Does he need to tag in someone like a Brad Wall or a Daniel Smith to kind of be his foil down there?
I don't know if you've seen Brad Wall on social media lately. I wouldn't let him near anybody.
Okay.
Brad should stay out on the ranch with the cattle. He's angry. Good God bless him. I love him. But yeah. And 6 months ago, I would have said, send in Doug Ford. They can speak the same language. I wouldn't let Ford near any of this right now either for the same reason. Who would it be? I don't know. I think Carney could pitch a good deal. I think Dominic LeBlanc is a good salesperson. The bookish Michael Sabia, who's the clerk of the Privy Council, and Carney's chief of staff, Marc-André Blanchard. I'm not sure that they are, the people to sell to Trump, but they can talk to the other top bureaucrats. But yeah, we got to pitch that all in. And look, the Americans have been looking for us to do things fast for a while. Before all of this started, I was with an American diplomat who had come up under Biden, and he was complaining to us, why have you guys not moved on the Grays Bay port yet? We just need you to do stuff. So for the folks that don't know, that's a Nunavut. That we need a road up to Grays Bay. We need a deep water port in the Arctic. They said, we just want you to do stuff and not sit on all of these things that we think are necessary. So Grays Bay Port could be both defense and commercial capabilities in the deep water Arctic. We have not moved on any of this stuff, and the Americans under all administrations have been frustrated, especially over the last 10 years.
Okay, why is this continuing though? Like, what I can see, if you've got a personal relationship difficulty with someone, being obstinate of like, no, I'm not answering your calls, I'm leaving you on red, blah, 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 blah. That's childish. We're dealing with, like we just pointed out, $1 trillion, more than $1 trillion a year. That sounds like a simple thing. It'd cost a lot of money, but it's just straight infrastructure. So why aren't they moving on things like this? I like to point out as evidence, if Trump had been burning bridges with absolutely every other trading partner and not signing any deals with any other country, then we could say, okay, we can see, the problem is in the chair. But he's not. He's signing other deals with other countries, which is why I'm looking at some of these bureaucrats who are paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, per year, to be smarty pants experts on this stuff, and diplomats, same thing, in order to smooth over ruffled feathers and to get deals. What's the problem here with Canada? Is it just that we've allowed this sort of narrative to build in our heads of like, oh, we don't like him, so we're not going to play ball?
I think that's part of it. I mean, we took a trade war position when other countries took a negotiations position. And we did that from the start. And there was a provincial election here in Ontario, one on let's fight the big bad mean guy in Washington. Then Mark Carney ran a federal campaign on the same thing.
Right.
And so there's a mindset for a lot of Canadians. Look at all the Canadians that have decided they're not going to Florida or to Arizona or to Palm Springs because of Donald Trump. They're giving up on their vacation, and often in places that aren't voting for Trump or where Canadians are well liked and loved. So there's that mindset. Then I think we've had the wrong team in place. Months ago, Prime Minister Carney announced Kristen Hillman would be our lead negotiator. That was an awful mistake in my view. Kristen Hillman is a smart woman. She is a well-regarded trade negotiator. She's not a diplomat, and she does not speak MAGA. She does not speak Trump. She's been Canada's ambassador for several years now. She did not even reach out to make contacts with Republicans, knowing that they could have won. She was convinced it was going to be Biden, and she could just continue, being nice with Democrats. We don't have good relations with people in the Trump White House, and we haven't for some time. I think LeBlanc has done the best job he can doing that sort of thing, but we've had the wrong team in there. And so, not only was Hillman not making contacts, she's just not the type of diplomat we need in that position. In my view, London, Washington, all of the big diplomatic posts should be held by political people, not
Sure.
career diplomats. There's just a difference in how the relationship works and an importance to those posts that they need to be political people. And so, yeah, I think it's been a question of putting in the wrong team, asking the wrong questions, offering the wrong things. As you say, everyone else is getting deals. We could, but we also have to change our mindset that we do have everything they want. We need to put it in a sales brochure, and we need to go down and sell it to them.
In their language, you said you
Yeah.
need to find somebody who speaks MAGA. So they better find an interpreter, like real quick. Brian, anything else you want people to keep an eye on coming up next? I find when you're trying to deal with somebody with whom you have a difficult relationship, I find it's important to acknowledge that there's a problem, find common ground, find something, anything of like, yeah, you and I agree on this, and then agree on your next meeting, your next joint thing. Where do you see the next joint thing happening between
Well,
Ottawa and Washington?
Carney and Trump are both going to APEC.
Okay.
They were at ASEAN together
Mhm.
in Malaysia, did not see each other. They were not at the same events. Both countries are members of APEC. They're going to be there. Carney and Trump clearly have a decent personal rapport. And what Trump's angry about right now is the guy sitting 2 floors below me here at Queen's Park, Doug Ford. Carney's got to figure out how to get in front of Trump. And we saw the joking camaraderie when Carney flew to Egypt for the peace deal signing ceremony. They're, hey, thanks for upgrading me to president. Oh, at least I didn't call you governor. So there's
Good.
clearly there's a connection there.
Yeah.
And I'm told that Trump respects him, but doesn't trust him yet because they don't know each other well enough. Get in his face, talk to him, smooth things over, and then use that rapport that they clearly have to try and move forward a deal. And it's in the best interest of the country. So for any of your viewers saying, no, I don't want Carney to succeed, if he doesn't, we're all going to be eating gruel soon. So, do what needs to be done, get in front of him, show that friendly side, and try and move the ball forward.
Brian, absolutely right. Thank you so much for your insights. Have fun today at Queen's Park and on the phone. I always picture you like Batman trying to sort things out behind the scenes with DC. So thank you for that. Once again, that is Brian Lilley, senior columnist with the Toronto Sun newspaper chain. Be sure, of course, to listen to his podcast, Full Comment. You can check it out. It's usually the orange icon there on any podcast provider. Thanks so much, my friend.
Thank you.
Folks, this is super important because as we've explained at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, tariffs are just trade taxes. And unfortunately, they can be used as a form of punishment, okay? The problem is the people who are bearing the brunt of that punishment aren't those career bureaucrats that Brian was talking about there, who make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year out of your paychecks because they're all paid by taxpayers. No, the people bearing the brunt of these punishments that stem from and are triggered by and exacerbated by personal conflicts, you, everyday working people, small business owners, okay? People who work in the resource industry, people who work in the auto industry. It's normal everyday working people who are wounded on both sides of the border. And like we showed you with those numbers, it's more than $3 billion a day in two-way trade. It's more than $1 trillion a year in two-way trade between Canada and the United States. And frankly, this is what we pay bureaucrats, diplomats, and politicians the big bucks for. To be the adult in the room, to put on their big boys and girls pants and go into the trade negotiation room, okay, swallow your pride in some cases, and actually hammer out a deal. Other countries have hammered out deals with the United States, and they're not getting punished with their taxpayers' levels of tariffs anymore. Why are we still in this punishment position? Why are everyday hardworking Canadians, taxpayers, paying the brunt of these tariffs? We need these folks to hammer out a deal, regardless of what you think about the personalities involved. So thank you so much to Brian Lilley. I know he's usually talking to a lot of contacts on both sides of the border. He's got a lot of contacts in the labor industry in Ontario, auto industry, and in Washington, D.C. So hopefully some cooler heads will prevail and we work out a smart deal here and calm things down. I just wanted to end with a quick note of appreciation. We've been getting a lot of feedback from our interview that we did with that brave school teacher in Edmonton, Alberta. She's got a couple of decades of experience and she had had enough. She spoke out, she reached out to Juno News, and she said, listen, we should have accepted that deal that came from the Alberta government. It was generous. We should have moved forward. I've been hearing from a lot of teachers privately who feel the same way, but they're too scared to speak up, and I understand why. Okay, they don't have as much experience as that teacher lady has, okay? And they're worried about retribution from their colleagues and their union, which would be a terrible place to be, especially considering the fact that they've gone 3 weeks now with no paycheck. So this is what we're expecting here in Alberta as a quick update on the teacher strike. We're expecting back to work legislation to be tabled today, Monday. Last I heard, kids could be back in class Wednesday morning. So for the parents in Alberta who are trying to get school lunches ready, be ready for Wednesday morning. Thank you so much, as always, for watching this show, and be sure to like this video and share it with your friends who need to know.